Mats
mit Elton
und Dodo.
Unser Podcast von den Mitfrauen aus der IT.
Für Nerds und Neugierige.
Hallo, wir haben mal wieder eine englische Folge für euch. Haben wir lange nicht gemacht, aber wir haben unsere Kollegin Rachel dabei und wir reden über On-Call. Hello, very happy to have you.
Hi.
Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We will have the topic on-call and on-call routines and the good and the bad about it. We'll actually start with a little guessing game. But first, let's welcome Rachel. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me again. My first podcast experience. Very interesting for me. I'm Rachel. I know you both pretty well already because we work together. I'm from the UK originally, from Birmingham. I moved to Germany 7 years ago now, nearly 8. And I've been working in software for, I don't know, I think it's approaching 10 years. It's building quite quickly, actually. But I didn't start in software, so I kind of moved into it after a few years of trying other things out, background in physics. And I work as an engineering manager at 1K5. That's how we all know each other, which is very nice.
Actually, Rachel was interviewing me, so she kind of hired me.
Part of the process.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Maybe as an introduction, what is on-call? ChatGPT gave me a nice answer. Being the designated adult in production misbehaves, which I
I
think is
like
suitable.
that. Nice for a young
Cute.
parent.
Strips away the firefighting and makes it sound pretty calm.
Yeah.
No. But it's generally when you're responsible for work outside of your normal working hours. I think it's also.
In best case, nothing happens. In worst case, you have to answer your phone and do some firefighting.
Exactly. All right. Quick guessing game to start with the topic. My first question to the two of you is, how many alerts per week is considered sustainable for an on-call engineer? A, 5, B, 20, C, 100, or D, unlimited because we're passionate?
I would even say 1 per week. But I'd go with the minimum number then. 5 is once a day.
I would also go with 5. It really depends on what the incident is, though, right? So much can vary.
And at what time of day? Is it waking you up each night, or is it during your normal working hours?
5 times, 5 nights in a row would not be sustainable.
Yeah.
I think for me, 2 is already much in the general on-call week that we have at 1K5. And I think 1 is totally fine. 2 is also still fine. But after 3, I'd say, whoa, that's a heavy week.
Yeah. Yeah, the question was sustainably. We're not talking about different phases of like the incident management maturity at the company, right? Because there are phases when 3 would be a good week. But then there are phases when even 1 feels disruptive.
Yeah. All right. The correct answer, obviously, is it depends.
Tricked.
Okay, next question. What's more stressful than being paged at 3 a.m.? A, being paged twice. B, being paged and not knowing what system it is. C, being paged and realizing you wrote the code. D, being paged during a date.
B.
Yeah.
Disrupting sleep is way worse than disrupting any kind of daytime activity, in my opinion.
And also, I think that C is actually a bit calming because if you broke the code, you can fix it as well.
Yeah.
And I think you already have this weird bias in your head. Whenever an alert goes off, deep down, you think, it's me. I did this. It's the code I deployed yesterday. So it's actually nice if that is the case in a way, because it avoids you going down that rabbit hole for no reason.
Yeah.
I prefer me being paged because of something that I broke compared to someone else being paged because of something that I broke.
Yeah. And then
I guess there's a
waking up in the
fifth
morning.
question. What about being woken up at 3 a.m. for a false alarm? Is that better or worse?
I think it's worse.
It's worse, but technically in that moment, you can go back to sleep much sooner. But I agree. For overall, long term, it's worse.
And I would also not really trust myself if I find nothing's wrong. I think I'd spend more time awake to really be sure that nothing is wrong. compared to an alert and I see immediately, okay, this is the error and how I can fix it.
But then I think if something's really broken at 3 a.m., I cannot get any help. Like I can escalate it to someone else, but then a person that can probably fix it, if I have no idea what to do, the person's going to be at their laptop at like 8, 9, maybe 10. And until then, there's nothing I can do, essentially. I can put up a banner and say like, we're so sorry, this doesn't work right now. Which I also think is kind of stressful.
Or an alert going off where you don't even know if this has impact. So you can tell something's broken, something's not working, but you don't know how to fix it and you don't really know if it has impact. I find these ones very frustrating because now I'm thinking, am I going to stay up all night trying to fix a problem that might not even be a problem in the end? That feels really annoying.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, lots of variants.
All right, last question. What's the strongest thing you can say during an incident? A, I'll fix it. B, it's probably nothing. C, let's slow down and define the problem. Or D, who approved this deployment?
I think I've definitely said D at some point. And then often it's me that approved it. Strongest, like, which is the best, right? What's the best thing to say? Probably C, right?
What was C?
Let's slow down and define the problem.
I would reframe it maybe to understand the impact.
Yeah.
Because I think this whole thing of, let's understand what's broken and how to properly fix it versus let's see where the impact is and mitigate the impact is such a common like misdirection, right? Especially between devs where all we want to do is dive into the code and see how we can try to fix things.
Yeah.
I think my option is always just to breathe and then go from there. Nothing's worse than a headless chicken.
Agreed. The headless chicken and also being alone as a headless chicken. And that's where for me, always triaging, if possible, in the middle of the night, it's probably not possible. But if it's anything during, normal hours, having another person there and accepting help, so amazing to help do that kind of process of, am I getting a little bit too frazzled at the moment to be able to look at the problem?
Also just talking it through, I think really helps.
Yeah. So rubber ducking. Ah,
Ellen has a rubber duck.
nice.
Yeah, and the rubber duck has a little computer.
My God.
Yeah.
I love it. I
actually never talked to it, but it's there. Okay, should I continue?
Yes.
We already talked about being interrupted at 3 a.m. And I have two numbers that I'd like you to guess around lack of sleep. The first one is a bit more general. And let's assume that you didn't sleep for 24 hours. How it impacts you in a cognitive way is translatable to how much alcohol you have in your blood. The number is not too high.
I think it's like 2 beers or so. So like, I don't know, what is that? 1 promille?
I also wouldn't be able to do it in terms of like actual alcohol blood levels. But 24 hours without sleeping, for me, that would be way more than 2 beers. Impact on my body. That would be like a bottle and a half of wine, I think. It would be quite a lot.
Fair enough.
I mean, if we're talking about young mother compared to my sleep, I really can't function without it at the moment. So
yeah, Doreen was right. 0.1% of
good guess.
Blood alcohol. Yeah, Doreen is annoyingly good at these games. Yeah, I mean, this number is kind of old. I found it in a study from 1997, but it's pretty interesting to see if you don't sleep enough, you can compare yourself to someone who's legally drunk. This also, of course, impacts your code quality. I would like to know how much you think it either increases or decreases the code quality.
As a percentage?
Yeah.
Depends.
Right? I think it goes down.
So it definitely goes down.
Do I get a point?
But then maybe you're more creative in like a kind of like drunken state. And then, I don't know, you're way more inventive and you find the solution to your problem you were looking for.
This was the original vibe coding.
for solution finding it may be a good thing, but it actually lowers your code quality by 50%.
Wow.
But I would really question this number. That definitely depends on the person, I would say. And then what you did during so if it was super stressful, 24 hours, everything has been down. You've 24 hours just like dug into it, like super stressful. Your manager is behind your back yelling at you why this isn't fixed yet. Definitely decreases it more than.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know. I was chill awake for 24 hours and then I have to fix something.
I can only share that this study, I guess that they were looking at the same person and compared the code that they produce. So at least they said it's a single night of sleep deprivation and that reduced the code quality. So I guess they had like one day code quality of this amount, next day code quality of that
Okay, and
amount.
what is code quality is my next question.
That was my question too.
Okay, let's do that in a separate episode then.
I can come back.
Yay! Yes.
Okay, stay tuned for the code quality discussion that we are going.
I actually do have Wait, are you done with your guessing question?
One more thing. Why am I talking about that anyway? Being on call can disrupt your sleep. And I think it's pretty important how the on-call routine deals with such things. Are you kind of allowed to then strip away 1 or 2 hours on the next day of your normal working hours to sleep and to recover? Or do they force you to still deliver on everything else that you are supposed to do? What's your number about?
My number, I guess it goes into the direction of why do we even have on-call? It's a good guessing question. I'm now curious to see if Doreen can get it again. I've got my church bells now. Hope it's not too loud. What do you think the estimated cost is per year to organizations in North America, so limited to North America as a continent, due to incidents, so downtime?
Poor.
I don't know, like 3 trillion, like a lot.
A lot. Do you want to take a guess, Ellen?
10 billion.
It's in between the two. It's closer to Doreen, so it's 700.
9.
I'm sorry. Don't shoot the messenger. Yeah, 700 billion a year. And what I also thought was interesting, this was a report that was done 6 years ago, so I'm not sure how much it's evolved since. But
wait a second, is it really closer to Doreen? You said 3 trillion, right?
700 billion. Yeah,
Doreen
okay.
Said...
It is closer
I'm
to
sorry.
you. Closer to you.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
True, you win. I was like, this is bigger, you know? The order is closer. But what I thought was really interesting is that 78% of that cost estimate is actually attributed to lost employee productivity. So it's not just the costs of, a customer can't buy their sofa, whatever it is, but actually that we get interrupted so much and that we can't continue our work.
That makes sense.
Interesting.
This is maybe a good segue to one of the questions you wanted to talk about. What is your worst, or what was your worst on-call experience?
I would say there isn't a standout experience that was by and large the worst one ever that I still, have nightmares about or anything like this. There were a couple of times though where it really sucked. I think the first time it really sucked was when I had brought down basically order intake at the e-commerce company I was working at, and I didn't know I'd done it. And I kind of got brought into this call with like 40 developers, all very senior in North America. Everyone really panicked, and they were basically like, "What did you do?"
Really?
And, yeah, and it was all like monolith world back then. We had this huge shed table that my team was trying to clean up, and I had reduced the max size of a column. And it turned out a certain system was trying to write to that column with larger values. So we had to do some like emergency database migration stuff to get it back. But just because it was the first time where I had really caused a problem, and I was very junior and I had no idea that this was going to happen, and I was just very much kind of scrambling, like it really was panic. So that really sucked. And then other times where it's been annoying, I've been in a few where basically you're just running out of ideas and it feels like you've lost also the structure of, thinking through the problem. What have we ruled out? You're a bit brain fried. I've had this both at 1K5, but also at previous companies where you just feel like, I'd say my experience has been that like 80% of incidents, you find out what the problem is pretty quick. And then it's all about figuring out mitigation and solution. And then sometimes you've run through all of the run books, all of the options, and you just don't know why things are breaking. And this is always a moment of desperation, I think, in an incident. And that's also where people tend to lose their heads a bit more. And dynamics can come into play, or you can end up realizing you've wasted an hour when you should have brought someone in already to help you. Yeah, so those ones I think are especially frustrating. How about you guys?
I have kind of similar ones. So the first one was also where I thought I broke something. And it was in a company where our project teams were pretty small. I don't know, I think we were like 2 or 3 developers on one project. Reapplying some seats to the database. Just when I hit enter, I figured that I was connected to production
Oh no.
instead of staging.
Oh no.
I thought that I had wiped all the production data and overwrote them with the test seats. And I was just immediately going to the phone booth of a colleague who was luckily in the office as well. I was like, Daniel, I need your help. Because also we were using Azure and then we didn't have the full support. So we weren't able to access database backups and all that. Turned out that I did not overwrite everything, but instead I added the test seats to the production data, which wasn't as bad. But that was where I felt my heart sink into my pants. And then the other one was more about the timing and also the topic, because I had a friend over, my best friend, who wanted to introduce me to her partner. And right when they were here, my phone rang. So I had to open my laptop immediately. And then I saw, okay, this is nothing that I've seen before. It has also been an area that I didn't really touch. And I didn't really know what to do about it, because also the runbook wasn't really... I think it was also an alert firing that didn't... It was just a symptom and not the root cause that was highlighted in the alert. To figure out what's wrong and where this problem comes from, I needed to escalate it actually to you, Rachel, because you were you were the one in the escalation path. And then I think in the end we were like 5 people in the call trying to figure out what the problem was. It took quite some time. At the end, someone else fixed it 2 a.m. in the morning that had like all the knowledge to actually fix it.
Is this the one where I had to call someone who was actually like on the S-Bahn on the way to a party because they were the only person who knew how to fix the...
Exactly. And you only were able to call that person because your partner had the number. So
that did not go to plan. We also had a moment in that incident where we were going to run commands on production that we thought would fix everything, but none of us really were familiar with these commands and felt very confident that this wouldn't create a bigger problem. So there was also this sense of just, fear and uncertainty that was challenging. Yeah.
How about you, Doreen?
The worst one was when we just started to have... So we had a very flaky, or not a very established on-call rotation, and we just started introducing alerts. And we also just started procuring energy, and everything was very scary. And I think the week I was on call, I was waking up like 3 nights in a row or so. And, like, I always knew kind of like what was happening because I've built a large part of it, which was then lucky because I woke up and was like, okay, this is not an issue at 3 a.m. We don't procure energy at that time. I can just mute it essentially, or I can, I don't know, do a small fix and then it's fine. And I always knew what to do. It was just very annoying being woken up all the time. But it also like led me to improve the alerts quite a bit. And I think ever since then, nothing has gone off in that team during the night. So it was a good learning experience, but I wish I had thought of like something sooner. And also my partner was very annoyed. It's like he also woke up obviously every time.
And he didn't get paid.
And he didn't get paid.
I would also add on that I had this with Wayfair when we first had an on-call setup. And it's so many teams at this company, and sometimes your alert would go off. I had this one holiday with a bunch of friends, and every night I got paged and ended up in the kitchen of this like rented apartment we had, trying to fix what was going on. It was always not our problem. So we had built this distributed architecture now, but not in a very resilient way. And so often one other thing would go down and everyone else's alerts would go off. And then you would just be woken up and you couldn't do anything until this other team had fixed their part. But you also were supposed to stay there to help with like impact analysis. And I know it really sucked. And in the end, we kind of got out of this phase. It's a natural thing to do as well, right? To start with, like, we put alerts on everything. You realize pretty quickly how coupled your system is.
That's, for example, why my team doesn't really have P1, maybe for everyone who's not familiar with alerts and how that connects to an incident. You in general have alerts that tell you or alert you when some errors are peaking or if there is some behavior that's not normal for your system and not expected. And then you give it the criticality. So, for example, P1 is the highest priority up to, I don't know, P3 maybe, what makes sense. Our team does not have any P1 monitors because other systems would have monitors or alerts that would fire. Because what I found also in research is that one problem of having this alert fatigue is that you have so many duplicate alerts that fire, and then it's pretty hard to find out which one is the one that points you to the root cause.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rachel, do you maybe want to walk us through how the incident process at 1K5 developed? Because I think it's a pretty good example from like not super great and like super many alerts, alert fatigue, waking up for no reason to now actually being quite stable. And now I feel like when something goes off, usually there also is impact.
Yeah, I think I'd preface that saying that we're definitely still on the journey. We're definitely not at a point yet where things are perfect, but that's the whole point. You're always developing. Yeah, so when we started off, I mean, we had a very small tech team, and we also had a situation where we had a lot of majority partners, majority external people working in the tech organization, and then a few people that were actually employed directly by 1,5. And we set up a very basic on-call rotation that covered everything. And there would be one person who would be alerted.
This is kind of crazy if you think about how complex our product is, right?
I mean, we have always had 3 core kind of departments within tech that are barely touching each other. Very different domains. 2 of them are business related. One is customer facing. One is installer facing, to kind of simplify it. And they have their own applications, their own services, their own ways of doing things and flows. And then in the middle, we have our kind of developer platform that tries to provide shared solutions to those other teams. And we had one person who, if any of those things broke, they would need to wake up and try and figure out how they could fix it. We also had the ability to very easily create incidents. And I think at the very start, we didn't have a good shared understanding of even what an incident was. That took a while for us to tweak, I would say, and get a better shared understanding. I still think this is one of the hardest things actually to define. What is an incident? What is a bug? How important is interrupting everybody right now?
How would you describe an incident?
For me, there has to be significant impact. Because I do think if you go with the definition of any impact, bugs have impact all the time, right? That's what a bug is, that a customer doesn't see a button the way they would expect, that somehow there's some kind of impact on the product. But I think what's really important is that it's either widespread or severe, so that somehow in the end, the kind of quantifiable impact to the business is there. Because with the stat that I mentioned earlier, right, the majority of cost to the company is actually people being disrupted by the incident and trying to fix it, whatever the pain is from that. So it's always a little bit of a mental calculation that obviously over time you can get more sophisticated with. So you can actually start to put a number to that without needing to do a guesstimate from scratch each time, but to really understand is there widespread impact. And what we've done that I'm sure you both know about, we have these tables where each kind of domain tries to do that exercise for themselves, where they really say, what would the impact have to be in our systems to declare this as a P1? And what would the impact have to be to declare it as a P2, et cetera, et cetera. And it's usually something like, this system is severely degraded for most customers, i.e. they can't complete a important process. But I think that's a topic that we often are happy to skip past, especially on the dev side, right? It's much more interesting to get into what the problem is. It's quite hard to think about the impact that way.
Yeah.
What would you say an incident is? Would you have any different perspectives there? I'm curious.
I would have phrased it the same without the significant. So that's a very significant addition, actually. So something that goes wrong and has customer impact.
So I would say customer and business impact, actually, just because some things have customer impact and then you obviously should fix them. But sometimes you have a customer impact and it's not really relevant for your business, or what you're really doing is just very annoying.
Yeah.
And then that might be something that doesn't need to be fixed over a weekend, for example. Maybe then that is fine to be fixed on Monday morning, rather than, okay, at 2 a.m., what is really critical to be fixed?
Yeah.
So if you think about this, what would be worth for me to be woken up for?
This is a bit of a side tangent, but I think the way that on-call is remunerated, the way you're compensated for on-call, is very interesting and can have a huge influence on how the team then operates and thinks about managing that. One of my previous companies where we had a lot of incidents, you were paid per incident.
That is an interesting incentive.
Not the best incentive.
I made bank. I made so much money off incidents. And you develop a very weird relationship to them because you're not really trying to solve the root cause anymore. You're actually, in a very weird way, incentivized to cause incidents because every time you're alerted, you see dollar signs, right?
That's why I like our model pretty much, because it doesn't incentivize you for producing bugs or reducing security of your system, but instead you get the money for being on call and for saying, hey, if something happens, I am here. Then the best scenario is nothing happens and you still get paid.
Exactly. It makes so much more sense. It's crazy to me that so many companies didn't see this sooner. But I also didn't realize it at the time until it was really pointed out, and kind of a shift, I think, in the industry towards this model now. Yeah.
I once heard that kind of like in some companies, you also have developer productivity measurements, and then a measurement could be number of lines of code, and then you have a bunch of like boilerplate code. Or I did an internship once, and then another company the person was working at were like, they were measured by the speed of the code, and then developers started to put like sleep things in there to intentionally be like, okay, I make it really slow in the beginning and then gradually make it faster just by reducing the sleep, because that is easy. Yeah.
But I mean, maybe that's also a little bit of a middle finger to management, right? If you come up with such a shitty KPI, then people abuse it.
Yeah. I mean, this is a big topic, how you're incentivizing the team to do the right thing, to go in the right direction, and not kind of be incentivized to just get numbers to look good, but not actually drive the right impact. It's a discussion we've actually had as well in the management round at 1K5 around whether to track productivity. It wasn't a really heated discussion, but there were quite different views on it. And in the end, I have a bit of an evolving perspective on that one, because I was very anti this. But actually, I see now that if it's handled as one of many metrics, it's all about why are you using this? Why are you tracking this? What are you using it for? And if you're using it as part of this holistic overview, and you're actually understanding that more doesn't always equal better, but this is just another data point, the overall picture to understand what's going on, then I think it can be helpful. But there's so many buts there, and the risk is so high that you end up just focusing on that and not fully taking into account that picture that, I'm still not fully decided whether I'm pro tracking or not.
What do you think helped the development of our on-call process at 1K5 to mature it?
Maybe this kind of loops back a little bit to the evolution that we've had. We've now split out into having 2 different on-call people. One that is focused on the customer-facing domain and belongs to that customer-facing domain. They're in one of those teams. And the other one that's focused more on the installer-facing domain. And we have now a kind of manager escalation path as well, so that there is a place to escalate to. The escalation path used to basically be Barbara. There was like three of the kind of very top management that it would rotate between always, which wasn't very sustainable for them.
Barbara is our CTO, by the way.
Yes. Thank you.
We had her in an interview as well, if you want to listen to that one. I also think I would hesitate way more to page Barbara than to page, for example, Rachel when you're on call routine.
I haven't seen the numbers, but I've heard this was the case. The number of escalations has gone up now since having the lower level management rotation. Also, I think the engineering managers are a bit closer as well to the applications. So in terms of how could you help in that moment, it's different ways, of course. I think the higher management are much better for, we need to get this partner on the phone right now, if that kind of thing happens. But for helping to get other teams involved in that kind of context, I think this works quite nicely. The reason why I think this helps us is because you have much more control over the on-call monitors. So the people that are going into the on-call rotation, they contribute directly to the applications. It's very much this DevOpsy mindset, right? You build it, you run it. And I think that creates a nice incentive right from the conception phase to always be thinking about, how is this going to actually run in production? How could this cause problems for us? Where do we need to be a bit more defensive? Where do we need to get a monitor in place already? Because you might be the person and who's woken up. So I think it's really important that we have ideally representatives from all the core teams in that on-call rotation so that we have it really as like a shared responsibility and we all feel that sense of ownership. That being said, I know that you can't expect everybody to be able to do this all the time. It's pretty demanding. So some kind of balance has to be found there.
You also said that we still have a way before we're perfect. What do you think is still missing?
I think it's an ongoing process always. So I think you're always going to go through cycles. And this, for me, comes a lot down to the monitor coverage and runbook coverage. I think you'll always have waves that you've set up a bunch of monitors and they're not quite ready yet. And so you get drowned a little bit in alert fatigue. For the team that we've had this lately, where we over time kept creating more and more monitors because we saw how valuable they were. But at some point we weren't really checking anymore for, are they alerting at the right times? And we've ended up in a bit of a situation with alert fatigue where we've had to even mute or just disable a bunch of them now because we're not seeing the real impact anymore. Tends to be a bit of a cycle, and finding a way to continuously think about this topic and create space for it. I think the impact analysis is an area where we're trying to do better. We have a situation now where we have pretty good coverage of a lot of the systems. If something breaks, we look quite often at this ratio of what percentage of incidents were triggered by someone actually pressing a button saying, oh crap, something's broken, let's create an incident. Or a customer reported it, for example, or how many of them are automatically triggered with an alert. And this is tracking, we want the automated alerts to track up over time, right? This is getting better over time. So we have pretty okay coverage, but in terms of when that alert goes off, can the on-call person independently assess what the impact is and then actually start to fix the problem? We still need to pull people in from different teams to get that impact analysis and to even support with the fix. this section, I think the coverage is there, but what to do when it goes off. As Ellen had the experience she spoke about where we had to call someone from their Feierabend. I think this is something we need to work on more still.
Even before we had an on-call routine, something was broken. It was basically sometimes our CTO texting one of us. And I remember like a couple, like so many days actually, where then I was like checking like this thing and this thing and this thing. Because we had alerts for nothing essentially. And it was just kind of like, okay, I had to check this and this and this. We started setting up alerts and then we kind of improved with the alerts. And then also said like, maybe this doesn't need to fire it. But then I also feel like at some point there were too many and you didn't see them anymore. Like
exactly
how we do it. So we had Ops Genie first and now we use Incident.io. It's an integration with Slack, which I think was a huge, like also for me, this was a huge improvement. Like Incident.io is so much better and like so much more capable than Ops Genie. And like also saying in Slack, okay, I want to, like someone can easily raise an alert, like even if it's not a developer, for example, which I also think is good. And it's easy to pull people into a dedicated channel, which is automatically opened up, for example, by Incident. And you see all of the alerts. And then we have alert channels. And then for, I think, a lot of the teams, a lot of alerts are firing throughout the day, but none of them are really important because you were like, okay, this is a bit broken and I just need to fix this. And there's the ticket for it, but we haven't prioritized it. And then it's very hard if an actual incident is happening to scroll for all of the alerts, which you know are not really important, to find the one of like, oh yeah, I missed that.
Exactly. We had an incident last week where we did have an alert that went off that saw that this problem was happening. And we were basically unable to process an event that was being sent to one of our services, a certain kind of event. And then this backlog built up. And in the end, we couldn't process any events anymore because we were completely overwhelmed with the bad event. And we had an alert that went off, but that was hidden amongst 10 other alerts for our kind of pub sub base monitor alerting that were all firing because of much smaller issues. We are trying to look more into this like base monitor concept of like, it's always nice you set up something brand new. And to begin with, the dev platform team offered us these base monitors and they kind of covered the general, is the error rate going up? Is latency spiking? If it's a pub sub topic, are you able to ingest what's the oldest message? Things like this. But they don't have any context in them and they don't have any tweaking towards what kind of issues actually are P1 events that have real customer impact versus which ones are nice to have functionality that we care less about. And so that's a big step that we've been doing, but we have to keep doing more, I think, to move away from these just default template monitors that don't tell you much apart from something's broken somewhere to much more intentional input about what is the impact here? Is this really a P1? Breaking out those monitors. And it's not easy work. It requires a lot of thinking and it's not one that we like to do all the time, but it definitely pays off.
For me, what Incident.io also made a lot better is that we've gotten better at documentation just because it automatically says, oh, here you can, with one click, create a postmortem page. And then you kind of like just have to fill it in, but then the timestamps already kind of like set, which makes it so much better. And then you have an automatic summary and then you read through it and then some things are always wrong, but then you just have to correct it. Not having to do everything from scratch and being kind of like just having a checklist of like, have you done this, 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 and this? And here you have it's just one button to click on it.
Yeah.
I think that made it a lot better than just every person had to remember everything or everything that should be done.
Yeah, absolutely. We struggled with that a lot before. We had this beautiful process written down on how it should work when there's an incident. You should assign an incident commander. You should do an impact analysis. You should update stakeholders every 30 minutes to an hour, things like this. But as soon as, shit hit the fan, no one looked at the document and everyone just tried to fix the problem. And that makes total sense. But with something like Instant.io, you get these nudges all the time. No one's been assigned Instant Commander. Who's going to take Instant Commander? You said you would give an update in 30 minutes. Where's your update? And it's a little annoying when you're in the middle of it, but it's so much better to help keep us on track and also to not minimize how many different tasks are ongoing there. Kind of what I mentioned at the start. No one needs to be a hero in incidents unless it's 2 a.m. and then you kind of have to be a hero for a bit. But pulling in other people and saying it's too much for one person to do all of those things, I think it helps to visualize all of those pending tasks and encourage you to delegate, split up, and make sure that you are kind of monitoring that side as well. The transcription feature is amazing as well. It's a bit hit and miss. You know, the one, so this is where you join a dedicated like Google Meet in our case, where everyone wants to join to discuss what's going on with the incident. What you used to have to do, and that's what I've done in the past, is if you want to know what's going on, you have to join the call. And sometimes you end up with a lot of people just listening to this call. And that also creates a certain kind of pressure to the people that are trying to diagnose the problem, right? But what you have with Instant IO is that there's this, what's it called? The Instant IO transcribe agent thing.
Yeah.
It joins the call anyway, and then it starts to transcribe. And then in the Slack channel, we get these updates of what's actually being discussed right now, a summary of where the team are at with diagnosing the problem, what the next steps will be. And 95% of the time, I would say it's correct. Whenever the conversation goes into German, it's always a moment where it doesn't work so well. But this is super, super helpful.
I agree. I think it's very useful. Also, people are way more professional and like way more focused when the call is being recorded and transcribed. But also, before the calls were transcribed, sometimes you just had more fun on the calls, or you were chatting away like way more. It was way more informal, which also I like. So when you're in an incident and everybody jumps in and people are making jokes and it's just a nice vibe, which I think we had a lot at 1K5. So I think also for a good incident, it's nice if there's not a lot of pressure. People are just like kind of being like, okay, we need to fix this. We can also joke about it during the time. Like nobody's yelling. And I feel like that's happening a bit less ever since the calls to other people.
I don't share that feeling actually.
No?
Because I think that I am so used to these agents just taking notes that I don't even care. I see it more as help that there's a note taker and I don't have to take the notes, but instead I can focus on talking and investigating.
They do leave out the jokes. Like, they don't say like Rachel just made a really bad joke in the summary in the incident channel. I find it most annoying when they declare the wrong thing. So they say like, they found the problem and it's XYZ. And I'm like, we didn't find the problem and it's not XYZ. That's always annoying, but it doesn't happen too often.
I think that our process already is pretty good in helping mitigating some risks that you in general have. There's one that I'd like to talk about still, because we already talked about alert fatigue, where, I don't know, you go from your pager is something important to your pager is probably nonsense, and or even this, if everything is critical, nothing is critical problem. I think that's one risk we already covered quite a bit. Then this ownership question and the escalation path is also working quite nicely. Yes, we do have runbooks that sometimes have to be enhanced a bit, but at least you know which team to ask. And then the sustainability question of how much as a human can you cover when you are on call? Is it part of your job, or is it, I don't know, is your sleep interrupted so much that you can't really recover during the week? And then one part that we did not talk too much about yet is at least that's one factor that is essential for me to decide if I want to go on call, which is psychological safety. Do I feel safe enough to put myself willingly in this firefighter situation without being afraid of maybe even not being able to solve it?
And I feel like it has a lot to do with how other people respond. So, for example, if you're not able to solve it, will someone be mad at you? Because then I'm a lot less willing to be an on-call engineer than if everybody's super grateful and be like, thanks, you looked at it. It's okay that you didn't solve it. It's good that you escalated it. Let's fix it together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this also applies to the general engineering culture of how do we treat the cause of the incident as well? Like, how do we actually make sure that we take this as a learning process together and don't turn it into a witch hunt where we're trying to figure out who messed up and why? So I think it goes in both ways, right? Your attitude when you are investigating and responding, not immediately being annoyed as a default that you've been interrupted. And also how you're given that sense of, it's a sense of confidence as well, I think, from adequate preparation. We had those sessions, right, Ellen, where we started off with quite a limited round of on-call engineers. And then we widened the circle quite a bit when we did this restructure a few months ago. And when that was beginning, we had this monthly, I think, session where everyone who was new to the on-call process could kind of just come and hang out, talk about what their experience had been, say which parts were still feeling a little bit uncertain for them, where they weren't sure of themselves, what was stressful, what was not stressful, and just generally talk about it. And I found this super nice because when I was part of the OG rotation, there wasn't really anything like this. It was a lot more figure it out. We were kind of learning on the fly how to do it. I thought this was a really nice concept. Start making on-call feel more like a community where you can talk about it and share learnings and even just say, this was rubbish this week. This was so stressful. It was awful. And have, be able to talk about that actually, rather than say, no, I'm being paid for this. I need to suck it up and just accept it's part of the job.
This brings me a bit to a question. Maybe we have some listeners who think about becoming on-call engineer and aren't really sure, should they or should they not? So maybe we can talk about what qualifies you as on-call engineer. I think you do need some confidence. We touched that already, that if there is a problem, can stay calm and solve it. You have to know your way around the monitoring tools, the alerting tools. You can, but you can also learn it while being on call. But I think it gives you more confidence if you are already able to navigate Datadog like in a very good way.
Yeah.
Do you quickly want to say what Datadog is?
What isn't it?
I think it has quite many features, but we use it, for example, for investigating logs or having these monitors set up, having alerting set up, investigating service health and requests that go in and out.
Logs. It's the place where you go when there is an incident.
Exactly. Yeah. So confidence, knowledge of the tools. I had a third point, but I can't remember it right.
One addition I have, especially to confidence, is that being in the on-call rotation gave me a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
Saying, okay, I've seen this alert, I know how to fix it. And then repeatedly kind of saying, okay, I kind of seen this. And then every time you fix something, and then also every time you improve the process, this gave me a lot of confidence and be okay, I can do this. I'm a capable engineer and it's not a disaster.
And you learn a lot about the system that you're working in. Also the things that you don't touch that often. I think that's one part that I like a lot.
Yeah, I really love it. I mean, there's periods where I find it very annoying and I'm not looking forward to the notification saying, hey, you're now on call. But in general, I fully agree. I feel like there's so much that you get out of it. And that's why no one has to be on call because it requires a certain level of commitment that not everybody can make. And that's totally fair. But if it's possible, it's a great experience for all engineers to try at some point in some capacity, even if it's during working hours, doing the responding instead, to just get that feeling of how are the systems actually running? Where are their actual problems? How easy is it to understand what the problem is, even if it's a little bit outside of my area? And gaining that confidence, it's a constant conversation at all companies to decide how much to invest in the robustness, reliability of your systems. There's no better way to get leverage for those business cases by being involved in incidents and seeing firsthand where things break at the moment and where we need to invest more. That's why I love the postmortems. actually, because you get so much opportunity out of them and these very concrete business cases to invest more.
Yeah. Also, you don't have to go full in from the start. You don't have to say, I'm in the on-call rotation now into a full week. But instead, you can start smaller with, for example, being the incident commander for one incident and then go through the whole flow so that you already know how the incident itself is handled. Or what some people do in our companies, shadow someone. So you're not on call alone. Instead, you have the on-call person and then a shadow so that the shadow learns about the routine without and always having someone they can ask for help, which is quite nice.
I think you can also be an on-call engineer if you're a junior. You can then probably don't have enough or a lot of experience, but you learn so much from it that I think it's definitely also worth it. But I also think you can only do that in an environment where you have a lot of safety, where people are not then yelling at you. But if everybody's helpful and you feel quite safe, I think it's a really, really nice experience to do it if you're quite junior as well.
And a huge amount of it is following the process. I think that's the big misconception, right? That in order to be the on-call engineer, I need to be able to fix every possible problem that could come up in our entire tech landscape and know the code bases and everything. And this
Which
just
isn't true for neither of us.
Exactly. It's just not the case. At least that's what I felt was expected of me when I was first going into it. And it is a great way to learn those new skills and to learn about different kinds of problems that you might not come across every day. But a huge amount of it is just taking a step back and following the process and trying to understand what is the problem? What is the impact? How do we mitigate impact? Everyone can do this. It doesn't require any kind of specialized knowledge.
What is a postmortem, first of all, because we mentioned this now? And what is a good postmortem?
And what is a bad postmortem? Yeah, I was going to bring up the pit because we've stolen a lot of terminology from emergency service response processes, right? Which always makes it sound quite intense. So we say firefighting when we're trying to solve a problem, and we have a postmortem, which comes from the hospital world when someone has died, and everybody huddles in the room afterwards and discusses what went well. Are there any learnings from this for next time? So that is what a postmortem is. After the incident is resolved, after the impact is mitigated, we come together and we try to learn from it, and we try to understand what went well in that process. Where could we prevent this kind of thing happening? And where could we actually just do better in the process part as well? And also, really importantly, it's a time to thank everybody for the support and to do some shout outs as well. Really acknowledge the fact that this was stressful and that we all came together and that we did the best that we could. There's a couple of these post-mortem axioms that sometimes get even just read out at the start of a post-mortem. I'm a huge fan of this because even if it sounds a little robotic or repetitive, it still just reinforces that message, right? That we're not here to point fingers, we're here to learn with each other. It's very easy to end those sessions if you were somehow involved in the incident cause, and that really doesn't help with trying to identify learnings and be able to grow from this as a team. That to me is a good postmortem, where you can drop any sense of blame and focus on learnings and be able to talk very transparently about how it felt for everybody, and ideally take away one or two action items that you can really follow up on and work on next time. Yeah, what would you guys add to that?
I could add one thing that I think is not included in our postmortems.
Nice.
I always have trouble to note down what really went downhill. So something that just didn't work out. There's a lot of positively framed questions. Where did we get lucky? What can we improve? Blah, blah. But sometimes I just lack the point of, okay, it was really not working out at all without finger pointing. And I love the idea of these axioms as well.
Yeah.
But I think that should also be fine. Honestly, note down what not only could have been better, but had been really shitty, for example.
What sucked?
Yeah, exactly. Where shit hit the fan.
I disagree a bit because I don't miss it. Because usually we then phrase it in kind of like the what do we do now section. And then this will come up anyway of being like, okay, this didn't work at all. Like nobody had ownership of the service. We need to define ownership of the service first. And then it's more like a to do rather than just being like, this didn't work. Like I feel like it's a good thing to not just have a complaint section. I do know what you mean, that sometimes it's okay to rant, and if you do it in a
It's not about ranting. It's
just saying what was not good. But then I feel like if you try to rephrase it just as what can we do, like what are action items we take from this, it's more, for me, this is more productive. So I've never been in a situation where I wanted to just say this didn't work out and then had nothing kind of like, because then I think you're in a really shitty position. If something is not working in your on-call process, but you also have for example, if there is not a blameless culture, like and this is not something people want to improve, or if you're paid per incident and people are not really incentivized to actually fix it, and then you're like, okay, this is a really big problem I can't solve. This is really annoying. And I've never had the feeling that at 1K5 we are in a position where like, okay, there is something that's really annoying or that was really shitty during the incident. And then I have no idea, or I'm afraid to propose an action item that would kind of like make it better. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, it's not about, I wouldn't just leave this negative point up there floating without having another action item on it. I think for me, it just helps to note it down and then with a fresh brain, think about what can be improved. I don't know. I just need this section of, yeah.
One thing that I notice as it comes up sometimes in postmortems that I try to pull away from jumping to the action items quite quick and saying, we already thought about it. This is what we need to do. And fair, maybe there are some very clear ones, but I do like that in our template, we have this timeline section and this 5 whys section. So the timeline is where you come together. A lot of it is pre-populated, but you kind of refresh yourself, get rid of maybe the bias that you have of how it ended or bits that had stuck out to you, and try to think a bit more objectively about what happened. And I find that often uncovers interesting learnings like, oh, we were actually really slow to detect. Maybe we forgot about that because we were so focused on the fix and what to do better there, right? And then I really like the 5 whys, which is basically where we say, okay, what was the problem? Okay, why was that a problem? Why was that a problem? Why was that a problem? And go deeper and deeper. And this for me, because I think the question for us is always, what could have been not email, because we're now in the Slack age, but what could have been async? What needs to be actually a synchronous meeting with all the people there, because that takes time. And the 5 why part is one of the bits I enjoy the most in a live call with people, because we often uncover things that we didn't necessarily expect. And then you get some very interesting learnings out of those as well.
Now that we've gone full circle, do you have any closing comments, remarks on the topic? Something that you want people to know about being an on-call engineer?
I think for me, I would really echo what Ellen was saying before, that it can seem very intimidating. And I remember feeling very intimidated by the idea of it. But that it really is an amazing experience, actually. And you'll learn a lot. So if anyone is considering trying it out, raising their hand, volunteering, then I would say go for it, and definitely ask all the questions you have and check that the support is there for you to try it out in a way that feels safe for you. But yeah, I would really highlight that I've had some very fun and bonding experiences with the team through the on-call process. So it's definitely helped me to build confidence and feel more part of the team as well, which is great.
Same.
It's also such a different perspective and such a different way of working, because in your day-to-day life, you are always or normally thinking about, okay, what's the highest priority feature, whatever. I am going to build with a timeline and a deadline. And being on call and mitigating incidents is just something where you're just in the moment and try to do the best in that moment with whatever capacity you have. I think it's nice and reminds you of, hey, there's not only the new stuff that we're building, but there's also a running system. Yeah, I like that as well.
I know that we've mentioned it, that on-call is not for everyone. I really loved being an on-call engineer, and I'm not anymore because I have a small kid. And I'm also not sure when the next time is that I could actually do it. I'm responsible for another human. And then when, I don't know, let's say I would pick her up from Kita and then my phone would ring, what do I do? Of course, I can say, oh, you have to be quiet and I need to fix this. But this is, I think, not something that is also super desirable. So this needs to be kind of something, okay, if you are a parent, for example, it's a lot harder to kind of like manage because you are already on call for a tiny human. And I think that's why being an on-call engineer, I think it's great in general, but it should never be expected of people because it's not feasible for everyone.
But I also think that our constraints are really doable. Maybe not for a parent, I get that, but you don't have to immediately open up your laptop. You have 1 hour until you have to accept an incident and start investigating. That always helps me. The first time I thought, okay, now what I'm going to do with my weekend, I don't have to be at home all the time. I just have to be able to come back in time to investigate and open my laptop.
That's such a great point, actually, that I realized that I've become very relaxed when I'm on call. Generally, people are much more strict about, okay, I need my laptop with me all the time. I need to have perfect signal. I need to be able to, at a moment's notice, dive into a war room and start triaging an incident. And it's just not realistic. So I think that's a really great point. And with the point about it's not suited for everyone depending on what your personal commitments are. Health could be an issue, all of these topics. We also have within our teams, we call them first responders. So there's a smaller version of that rotation that's very limited to working hours, business hours, core hours. And I think there's always ways to get more involved with operational monitoring, how to look into issues, to learn and to train that kind of side of your profile without necessarily having a pager 24/7 that you need to respond to.
What I also really liked at 1K5 is that we have someone who holds Shabbat. And I thought it was quite nice. The person still said they would join on call and then just find a person who would do it from Friday evening to Saturday evening, which also made it quite flexible. And like, okay, this is something that is not negotiable for that person, but it's one day in a week that people can like, okay, you can't join because this and this. And I really liked it. It was kind of a very team spirit experience.
That's a great point that we didn't talk about, actually, the override functionality that exists. The way we have our rotations set up, it basically is going to automatically rotate between the group, rotating every week at the same time. There's like a Monday 5 p.m. handover, which is a good time during business hours to talk about what happened. And if your schedule doesn't work, you see that you need to be on call in 3 weeks' time, you're on holiday, you have a wedding, whatever it is, you don't want to take that risk. Someone else can volunteer to take your schedule. That so far has worked quite nicely as a process, but also requires a good amount of trust, a good sense of team, and people feeling confident that they can speak up and move these around.
Maybe at last, I would like to know, how did you feel the first time you went on call, and how would you feel now if you went on call?
First, I was relatively scared, especially scared of things where I had no idea about the system and also very unsure of what to do. Because also, I think it was in our company, and then there wasn't a good process, for example, yet of like, okay, I need to do this, this, and this. Now with a more mature process, with like a bot telling me, okay, you need to do these steps and then everything will be fine, even though you have no idea what system it is. And here are the logs you can look at. And this is a run book written by the people who know something about this service. Also, like, I gained much more experience and confidence, but also the process improved. So I think it's a bit of both. But now it's quite easy to be on call and fun. I'm much more excited, or I was much more excited to be on call. What about you?
Yeah, I would say quite similar. When I first went on call, I think I was most nervous about the infra side of things, anything to do with networking, anything to do with the service being unavailable, not actually the core application code, because I spent a lot of my time in the application code area, and that all scared me quite a bit. What was quite nice when I first went on call is that we had on-call engineers for every team. So I knew that if anything went down, it would be domain-wise something that my team was responsible for. And that's why I think I was so nervous about anything that was more networking, etc. Although quickly became very familiar with we would call it the white space deployment, just deploying the service again, and it would fix most issues 90% of the time. Turn it off and on again, right? Classic. So that definitely fed into the imposter syndrome feeling of, oh God, I'm really not qualified for those kinds of problems. Now how I feel when I see an incident, predominantly curious as to what's going on. It really depends what the incident looks like it is. I think quite quickly now I have a sense for, oh God, this one is not nice. It either is going to be very high visibility and priority to get fixed, or we just don't know how to fix this one. I think you develop that gut feeling how this one might go down. But I think predominantly now the feeling is of curiosity and not fear or incompetence, which is nice. How about you, Ellen?
I joined way later than you both, so the process was already what we discussed today. And also I was joining with many others that did it for the first time. So there was good onboarding, and everyone was kind of in the same ship. So I was actually a little nervous, but looking forward to it, definitely. I already took care of some incidents, and I think I'm somewhat naturally good at navigating such situations. So I was pretty content that I would be able to manage what's coming up or reach out for help. But still, I was a bit nervous. And now I'm just calm. So
that's great. Yeah, you just have to do it a few times.
Yeah, it is definitely something that's not immediately your comfort zone, but you can make it your comfort zone pretty fast. Or there's something wrong with the process, I would say.
Agree.
Nice. Okay. I guess that was a good perspective on call. Thank you so much for joining, Rachel. And stay tuned for code quality then.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me. It's honestly so nice to have this conversation and to kind of, I don't know, even if it's a topic that you're very familiar with and you interact with a lot day to day, you always kind of get new ways of thinking about it through these discussions. I think it's really interesting to go through it in this very structured, objective way, So thank you for the discussion.
Thank you for being here. And thank you for listening for the rest of your weekend.
Or week, depending on when you hear it. Bye.
Bye.
Vielen Dank fürs Zuhören. Das war Unmuted, der IT-Podcast von uns, Elton und Dodo. Ich bin Ellen, Senior Software Engineer.
Und ich bin Doreen, MLOps Engineer. Hier sprechen wir über alles, was uns in der IT beschäftigt und interessiert.
Wir tauchen tief ein in technische Themen wie Programmierung und Machine Learning, aber beleuchten auch die breiteren Aspekte der IT, von Personal Growth, Do's and Don'ts im Job bis hin zu Leadership. Wir schauen außerdem gerne auch mal über unseren eigenen Tellerrand hinaus, sei es in Richtung Hacking oder Robotik. Bei uns ist alles dabei.
Keine Sorge, du musst kein IT-Profi sein, um uns zu folgen. Wir wollen sowohl die Nerds als auch alle, die einfach nur neugierig sind, abholen und spannende Einblicke geben.
Wir teilen nicht nur unsere eigenen Herausforderungen, Herausforderungen in der IT, sondern auch die Tipps, Tricks und Geschichten unserer spannenden InterviewpartnerInnen.
Unser Ziel: Frauen und Minderheiten in der IT eine stärkere Stimme geben und andere dazu motivieren, sich für Technik zu begeistern.
Also, hört rein, gebt uns euer Feedback, zum Beispiel direkt jetzt über eine Bewertung und folgt uns auf Instagram, TikTok oder LinkedIn.
Und natürlich findet ihr uns überall, wo es Podcasts gibt.